just in case we're live streaming it. And then let's launch in. Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech
asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So this week's Torah portion, Ve'et Hanan, is the first of 7 Torah portions that have special haftarot of consolation in preparation for Rosh Hashanah that begin after the commemoration of the saddest day of the Jewish calendar, Tisha B'Av. This week's Torah portion, or this Shabbat, is called Shabbat Nachamu, after the first words of the Haftarah. And while we're not going to be speaking much about the Haftarah and Nachamu, I tried to pick pieces that speak to this notion of reflecting who we are, where we're at, our relationship to God, and the like, which I thought would fit into the theme after Tisha B'Av. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Hold on one second. Okay, share my screen. Here we go. Now let me make all of you bigger so I can see all of you. Okay, you can see it, Lunch and Learn, Parshat Ve'et Hanan. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Can you make that bigger?
It's already at 18. I don't know if I can, if it's bigger, you're only gonna have one thing on a page. So, but here, let me try. This is okay, how's that?
Better.
Okay, there we go. All right. So I thought we would start with the very first verse of the Torah portion. Ve'et Hanan el Adonai be'et hahi lemor. Moses speaking to the children of Israel in his final long goodbye says, Ve'et Hanan, and I pleaded with Adonai at that time, saying. So what we're going to be looking at is that word Ve'et Hanan. Do you know that word at all? Are any of you familiar with that? What is, interesting, that Hebrew word? George, I'm looking to you.
Is that like mercy?
Well, so like tachanun, supplication. So
okay.
So he supplicates, or he prays, or he falls on his face and is requesting. What else do you see, Leora? You're muted.
I wanted to say the same thing.
Okay. What is the nature of the Hebrew verb?
Oh, it's a reverse, first of all.
It's a reflexive.
It's reflective in reverse.
What does that mean, reflective in reverse?
Well, when you put a vav in front of it, either past or present,
You mean
or future, can change from past.
Yeah, this is not a vav hayipuch, but often yes.
Okay, reflective. Yeah, you're looking into yourself as reflective.
Okay, good. So this is a reflexive verb, meaning that we're doing it for ourselves, and that's going to be important to the commentary that follows. I just saw a hand. Whose hand did I just see?
It was mine, but I forgot what I want to say. Sorry.
Okay. So we have Moses, who's basically saying to the children of Israel, I threw myself before the mercy of the heavenly court in order to convince God not to wipe you out. That's basically what Moshe is saying. And he says, and I did this in the form of tachanun, of supplication, where I got down on my hands and knees and I cried out to God to be compassionate. Rabbi Naftali of Ropshitz from the Torah Gems book says, right, I pleaded with Adonai at that time, saying, and now he continues. The verse is vague and does not specify the time. It simply says at that time. So if you look in the Hebrew, be'et hahi, at that time. I pleaded with God at that time. So the question is, why does it say be'et hahi? Rabbi Naphtali is asking. Why doesn't it say, in the moment in which you sinned against God, I pleaded on your behalf? So he is suggesting that at that time is going to be a key to understanding our own ability to pray to God. So he says, there is a lesson here. We should always be prepared and ready to pray to God. We should not say, I have no time now, nor patience, nor inner space to pray. Rather, at every time, in every place, and at every opportunity, we should just get up and pray. What do you think about that? Do any of you ever have any difficulty with prayer?
Always.
Most certainly.
Okay, prayer is difficult. And my question for you is, what makes prayer difficult? Why is prayer such a hard thing? Stan? Stan?
It's the conception of the God that I'm praying to.
Okay, good. So one of the very challenging aspects of prayer is, who am I praying to? Right? What if I don't believe in God? What if I believe in God, but not the God that answers prayers? What happens if it's been proven to me many times in my life that when I fall on my hands and face and plead to God, I get no response? Right? So Stan is saying, what is the efficacy of prayer? And who am I really praying to when I am praying, and what do I expect in return? Excellent. Leora, Judy, and then George.
For me, I have to be at a place where I'm completely inside my soul to be able to connect to the prayers. Because many times, and it was very difficult for me to be like in Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and when I wasn't connecting, it was just terrible.
Okay, excellent. So where Stan's comment was about externally, who am I praying to? Leora's comment, the difficulty with prayer is, I'm not ready for it. I don't have the right intention. I don't have the right kavanah. I don't have the right focus. It's difficult for Leora and many of us to pray because it's hard to pay attention. It's hard to concentrate. It's hard to get in a prayerful space within our head and within our soul. All right, Judy, and then George, and then it's funny, your name says Zoom user.
What?
I know, more Zoom user. All right, go ahead, Judy.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing. When I'm not feeling it or present, it doesn't mean anything.
Good. Okay, similar to Leora. George, go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of things going on here. First of all, we pray for something, like it's a butler, we're asking for deliver something to us. Whether it's getting us out of danger, supplying us with wealth, you have to have a continual relationship. That's the difficult part. Not just, oh, I need a favor, I'm going to
Got
call.
it. Okay.
So
So
calling up your, hey, dad, I need this or I need that. You got to have that line of communications open.
great. Okay, so what George is also raising is the difficulty with prayer is that oftentimes people pray when they are in deep need.
Yeah.
There's no long-term relationship that they have with the divine, where prayer makes more sense. Excellent. Okay, Mort.
Yeah, I think all cultures, regardless of their religion, seems to turn to a prayer to a deity. It seems that it's inherent in human nature to want to seek out some super force that they can turn to when things appear to be beyond their control and they want some type of intervention. And that seems to be universal within humanity.
Mm.
For sure. That doesn't necessarily address the question about what is the difficulty of prayer, but I think you are.
I find that even though I'm an atheist, I will say comments like, thank God, I'm glad that worked out. Those comments come to me, but I don't think that prayer can influence anything other than psychologically for the individual who's praying. It may have an effect.
Okay, excellent, Mort. I love that. So there is supposed to be some change, emotional, spiritual, psychological, in the act of prayer, whether we believe in God or we don't believe in God. And that's why I think, to Judy's and Leora's comment, to have the intention and the direction is so important to the act of prayer. If you don't have the focus, then there's not going to be that kind of emotional, psychological impact that Mort is talking about. Stan and then Judy.
Well, in the liturgy, there's prayers of supplication that we're asking for things. Of course, there's prayers of praise that we're thanking, or that we're thanking for things. So there's more than one kind of prayer. And one of the things that I find the most useful is what Rabbi Schulweis does with prayer of supplication in particular. He ends the prayer with "through me." Whatever the prayer is, I want this, and through me.
Okay, so Stan is talking about Rabbi Schulweis's predicate theology position, that whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, when we act in a godly manner, we are bringing God into our life. That's what Stan is referring to when he says, Rabbi Schulweis, that the prayer that we're seeking is that we become the stand-in for God in moments where we can reach out and lift up another person. Good. Judy?
It's also, I go back to what Leora and I were saying, a step back is getting in the habit of prayer, and you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I came into this pretty late, and getting into the habit of prayer and knowing when to pray and how to pray and all of that.
Excellent. In fact, Judy, it reminds me. Do any of you watch baseball?
Oh,
Yes.
A little bit, yeah.
So I was watching a Dodger game the other night, and there was a camera, I think it was on Sunday, there was a camera that was behind home plate. So you can see the ball as it's
Oh, I
being
saw that, yeah.
pitched, and you have the view of the hitter.
Huh.
And you're watching 100-mile-an-hour baseball coming at you. And here's what's the amazing thing as I'm watching this. I'm saying to myself, how is it possible for these guys to be able to differentiate when a ball is coming in that fast between a strike and a ball, and yet they can do it?
Yeah.
They are so good at anticipating not only where the ball is going to go, but knowing as the pitcher throws the ball, whether it's going to be a ball or strike. Now, that doesn't mean they hit and get on base 100% of the time. What's the average for a baseball player's success in getting on base?
Maybe
That's about 250 hitting,
25%.
but then airs and the other things, but
Forget that. Yeah, somewhere between 20 and 30%.
yeah.
20 and 30%. Now, to succeed 20 to 30% of the time, what goes into that success? How often do you think baseball? Yeah, Nancy.
Yeah, because I was just thinking you have to have sincere concentration And that relates to prayer. You have to be, well, with prayer, you have to be in the mood. I'm thinking high holiday time or something like that, but still it has to do with concentration or focus, I guess is the word I'm trying to use.
Thank you, Nancy. Exactly. There has to be so much, as Leora and Judy were saying, kavanah, so much focus and intention and attention. What else goes into them only getting on base 20 to 30% of the time? Stan?
Well, it's not on the subject, but I'm of course a follower of Judaism and a follower of baseball. And they went together just recently for only the second time in Major League history. The batter, the pitcher,
Third time.
and the catcher, what?
It was
Yeah, were the same. I mean,
it's
at
happened,
one time there
happened
was
a few times.
I
But-
saw in the Jerusalem Post, there was something about that particular.
Yeah, it was in JTA a couple days ago that the batter, the pitcher, and the catcher were all Jewish.
Good.
I think the key to the success of a hitter is that they practice a lot. They don't only just show up for the game. They put enormous practice being able to get up and only get on base 20 to 30% of the time. So to Judy's comment, right, it takes a lot of work. And to Nancy's comment, you have to concentrate. And I think that's what Rabbi Naftali is teaching us here. What Rabbi Naftali is teaching us is that prayer is the kind of thing that we should always work on, focused on. We don't like just say, okay, I'm going to show up and hope that when I get there for the high holidays, if I've never prayed during the year, that I'm going to have a spiritual experience. It doesn't work. You can't expect to have a deep, changing experience if you don't practice it now on a regular basis. That's one thing he's saying. Thing he's saying is don't assume that prayer only happens in the synagogue at services. Prayer is the kind of thing that can happen at every moment of your life. Every moment you're grateful for that which is a gift in your life is a moment of prayer. Every moment in which you are feeling out of sorts and desire to deepen your relationship to the universe and other people, or you want to change some aspect of your being and you're committed to that, can be a moment of prayer.
Yeah,
It doesn't
Rabbi?
have to happen at the synagogue, and it doesn't have to happen only on a Friday or a Saturday. George?
Yeah, well, prayer extends beyond asking for things. In other words, we could be thankful for things, or we see, a wondrous sight. There's a bracha.
Yeah, I think I
There's all
just said
kinds of
that.
different things. It's not just give me this.
Correct.
There's all
Correct.
kinds of other prayers or thoughts.
There is prayer called bakashot, which is request. There is also prayer of gratitude
Yeah,
that George was talking about. And there is prayer simply of deeper awareness of all that goes on around us.
or when we reach a new season, a holiday. We thank God that we reach this. We're
Okay,
not
there's also there's
Yeah.
prayer of mitzvah, of when
Yeah.
we do certain things
Yeah,
that are
yeah.
supposed to deepen our connection
Yeah.
to God. That's another form of prayer.
Yeah,
So Rabbi Naftali is saying that by the Torah saying be'et hahi, at that time, and not specifying when Moses prayed, it's inviting us to think differently about our own prayer experiences. It's inviting us to say that we need to practice prayer on a regular basis. It's inviting us to say that when we pray, we should have deep kavanah and intention, and that we should make a habit of daily prayer so that when we need to pray to God, we will have the means and the ability and the practice to be able to do it. It will come naturally. It won't feel like a foreign act. Stan?
Well, of course, we have the high holy days coming up, And we have the tradition of the month of Elul before the high holidays as a kind of a preparation for, that's in our tradition. And that's not the only time that we have this kind of a, preparation, periods of, ongoing daily kinds of preparation, if you want to call it that.
So Stan, you're suggesting that if we're going to take seriously the art of prayer, then there's no time like the present to begin the practice so that we can be ready and more moved when the holidays come to actually engage in prayer. All right, any last comments on this one? Otherwise, we'll move to the next text. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk. He also is playing on that same expression, the etahi. And he's saying, this is Moses talking, I prayed before God at that time. In other words, the last moment of my life, saying that I might be able to say Adonai God. So what he's doing here is very interesting. He's taking this verse at the beginning and he's saying, Ve'et Hanan el Adonai, I supplicate myself to God, be'et hahi, in this moment when I'm approaching my death, saying El Adonai, I believe in God. Do you follow what he's doing here? He's switching the language of the verse. He's taking this, if I take this El Adonai, cut it out here, and whoops, hold on, put it here. Let me see if I can do this in the Hebrew. Yeah, that's the way he's redoing the verse. I pleaded at the moment that I was approaching death, saying, I believe in God. God is my God. That's what Menachem Mendel of Kotsk is suggesting that Moshe is doing as a way of teaching us an important lesson about how we should live our life. George?
Yeah, it isn't the optimum way as you're going out of this world to say the Shema.
Yeah, there's a belief, there's a tradition that says
As Rabbi
that
Akiva,
before we die,
yeah,
the last words on our
Yeah.
lips should be
Yeah.
the Shema. But
Yeah.
what is that tradition really teaching us? Because George, I think it's teaching us the same thing that Rabbi Menachem Mendel is teaching us.
Yeah.
It's not so much that we say the Shema right before we die. Because do any of us know the moment before we're going to die?
Some of us do.
Usually not.
Well,
What do you mean
no.
when you say
I
Eileen,
certainly
some of
wouldn't
us?
hope so.
Wait,
Sometimes.
my husband screamed at me, help me, I'm dying, and he died.
Okay, so there
So
are
they do know.
there
Some
are
people do know.
Good. Okay, Eileen, you're absolutely right. There are circumstances where people may be gifted the ability to know the moment before they die. But I would say on average,
Yeah.
when I look around and I notice, right, and I see a lot of people who are in the last stages of life, they don't know the exact moment that they're going to die. Right? Your husband was in it was a gift that he felt it. For most people, they may be feeling they're approaching it, but they don't know exactly when that's going to
No,
happen.
that's what exactly that's what he yelled, help me, I'm dying, and he died.
Wow.
Immediately, as soon as he finished the sentence.
Wow. That's powerful, Eileen. I think that's unusual. I think most people have a sense that they are approaching death. And then for others, it just happens randomly. You don't wake up in the morning, or you get, struck by a car, or any of the other ways in which we can die. And so it's less about the exact moment than it is about how we should approach every moment of our life. And if we understand Menachem Mendel that way, or Rabbi Akiva that way, then what is this? How do we translate this statement? I think what he's saying is, can we be believers in every moment of our life? That's something that we want to strive to be. When George, you said that we're supposed to say the Shema right before
Well,
we die.
you're not necessarily supposed to, but that's optimal, I think. Sometimes you know when you're going to die, if you're going to be shot or something.
But
Or
George,
in World War II, you know,
I
you
know, but
may pretty well know.
George, that's why I don't think it's really about what you're supposed to say before you die. It's that your belief system should be
Yeah,
that since I might die at any moment,
yeah, of course.
at every moment, I
Mhm.
should hold fast to the belief that there is only one God, and that one God is my God.
You know,
Shema
Rabbi,
Yisrael
when I was training for
Adonai
my bar mitzvah,
Eloheinu Adonai Echad. In every
yeah,
moment, can I hold on to that theology?
yeah,
That's what Rabbi Menachem Mendel
yeah.
is inviting us to think about.
When I was training for my bar mitzvah, the rabbi said, you're supposed to repent one day before you die. You know, I said, how do you know? He said, you know, that's it. You got to
So
keep
what does that
doing it.
mean? What does that mean, George?
What you're saying, you know, you got to think this way, the Shema, the prayer, and the whole bit, is you don't know, at least in most cases, unless, again, it's World War II or something, you know.
I don't want to live my life with regrets. I don't want to miss out on the opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't want to not have been able to say, I love you to the people that I love
Right.
before I die. From a religious standpoint, what Rabbi Akiva teaches and what Rabbi Menachem Mendel teaches is, how do we maintain faith in our lives on a constant basis? Right? That's the challenge. And it's not so easy, because there are moments in life where we're going to lose faith. There are moments in life where we're going to feel distant from God. Tragedy is going to occur. Life is going to get in the way, right? If I am, you know, a mother of a hostage victim that is in Gaza right now,
Yeah.
I may very well be struggling with faith in God.
Yeah.
Certainly faith in the Israeli government. Certainly faith in, you know, the goodness and righteousness of humanity, but also faith in God for how this could have happened. That's normal. That's going to be. And so the question on, you know, Rabbi Menachem Mendel's statement is, can we struggle and work throughout our life on faith and not wait until it's too late? Mort, did you have a question? Jump in.
Faith in, I don't understand, Rabbi. Faith in what? You say struggle with faith in what?
Depends. If for those who are believers of God, faith that there is justice in the universe, that God is a just God, that
But
I'm living my life the way that God wants me to live my life, that I believe in the goodness and righteousness of this world.
does that have to be associated with the belief in God? What does God have to do with your underlying expectations of humanity and what should take place and what should happen, and reasonably speaking, it doesn't appear that humanity has benefited at all by a belief in God when we see what has happened historically over these many thousands of years. So I don't understand the whole concept of why a belief in God is so necessary.
May I have permission to reply?
Please, I was about to say, anybody on this call who would love to respond to Mort's very provocative statement, please, Ian, go ahead.
So there were three intellectuals, all of them Jewish, who made me a believer. The first was Baruch Spinoza. The second was Martin Buber. And the third was Mordechai Kaplan. I started to contemplate and give serious thought to belief in God because of Spinoza's belief that God is a metaphysical theory of everything. And as long as substance exists within the universe, there is a metaphysical phenomenon for why things are the way they are, because science can teach us how things came to be, but there isn't yet a theory of why they came to be. Therefore, in the absence of such an explanation, I choose to have a conviction that there is a theory of everything, one which is intangible and one which I can only grasp at through my comprehension of what I consider to be universal truths, metaphysical principles that I observe within my life and which I deduce to be true. And that brings me to my second thinker.
So wait, just pause for 1 second, Ian. So again, so the God that Ian is describing is understood by Spinoza. Mort is not a God that necessarily cares about the individual suffering and pain that happens in your life. But that doesn't deny that understanding that there is a God, right? That's the first definition that Ian just gave us.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Ian.
The second thinker was Martin Buber. And the reason why I add him onto Spinoza is because of his theory of the I-thou relationship. God doesn't make himself noticeable to humanity insofar as humanity does not find a reason to interact with him. I firmly believe that the main purpose of Judaism is not to bring about change within this world through petitionary prayer, nor to satisfy God's need for praise through our words of lofty exaltation, but rather to inspire awe at the universe and to bring us to contemplate why it is we have what is good for us and why there also is bad, and to find a way to reconcile the two. I think that the way we do that is through a personal need-to-need basis that only can be done on an individual level. And I find beauty within the attempt to reach out to God. And I think personally, this is a bit of a hot take. I think that I know that God exists only because I have metaphysical questions about why the world is the way it is. The absence of an answer indicates that there is a mystery. And if the mystery continues to hide from us, well, that doesn't negate the fact that it's still a mystery. There's still an answer to be found. And yet the world continues to go on the way it does for reasons beyond our comprehension. And the system that perpetuates this world through different, for whatever reason, well, we can certainly intimate at it and we can have a relationship with it.
So if I could summarize what Ian's second position, and I think Ian, you combined both Buber and Heschel in your words. God is waiting for us to develop that relationship with God, and the world is evidence enough that God exists. and the intimacy of a relationship that we have with the world, including everything in that world, is proof positive that God exists. So again, Mort, not necessarily speaking about the God that you were addressing, but still a powerful way of describing. Judy, we'll get to you in a second. What's the third? You said Mordecai Kaplan.
Yes. And specifically for his personal definition of God, one which I don't find satisfying on its own, but it builds off of the first two theories from the first two thinkers. The personal capacity for humanity to bring about their own righteousness. The metaphysical force, the spirit that allows for us to achieve salvation. And if you combine that with the theory of pantheism or panentheism, then you see that we are all part of God, and yet God also exists outside of ourselves because we don't know why we exist. We certainly know how we exist.
So if I could summarize his third position, Ian is saying that God is the force within each of us, the desire within each of us to bring goodness into this world. The power that each one of us has to recognize the godliness in the face of another human being and want to serve that other individual. So there you have Mort. And I think what is wonderful about Ian's description is not a single, but three different ways. And if we had more time, Mort, we can come up with dozens of additional ways of understanding the possibility of God in this world, and not limit it to a single which we might define God. And if we take Ian's vision and we go back to the statement, let me go back to sharing the screen. If we go back, that Rabbi, I pray God at this time, the last moment that I might be able to say, Adonai God. And take a look just at Jonathan Slater's comments on this. And then, we're going to wrap up this piece. The Kotzker points to a moment in which we might hope this prayer would be present, the moment of death. After all is said and done, after the whole of our lives have been lived, whether right this moment, today, tomorrow, years from now, wouldn't we want our final words to be the fullest truth? Would we not want our last breath to express something honest, something beautiful, words of grace? Adonai is God. Such words, there is, after all, nothing more. It may not matter that these be the words so long as whatever we say expresses a truth this profound. When those last words might be spoken, we might take care to speak them now, today, and not be looking forward to tomorrow. Who knows? In other words, in summary, it's not so much about how we define narrowly God. It's can we live our truth and see in the universe the possibility of infiniteness and express that in the way that we live our life, every moment of our life. That's what Menachem Mendel is inviting us to think about.
And I'd like to end with one last quote. You know why I love God, or how I know how I love God? Because I love life.
Beautiful. Thank you. Now, I saw some hands up in response to this large conversation. Mort, we'll start with you. You're muted, Mort.
I said I have nothing further to say.
Okay.
I
Okay.
understand, but I don't want to go astray with more dialectic discussions of this. So
okay, Mort, you can always make an appointment in my office and we can talk more about theology. Stan.
Well, mentioned Mordecai Kaplan, and I would say that my theology is closer to Mordecai Kaplan's than any other single theology. Actually, of course, Kaplan was Rabbi Schulweiss's mentor and teacher, and he integrated the Reconstructionist type of theology into conservative Judaism, and that's the conservative Judaism more or less that we have now. The other thing about Mordecai Kaplan is that he said that there was a divine creation, that the creation was not random. We can't look at the world and say that, just all of a sudden things got to be the way they were. Therefore, there must have been a divine creation. And it's the Jewish people then that have interpreted this divine creation throughout our history, and this is the Jewish people that we are today. But the other thing I wish to say is that, probably the teacher that I have most in terms of Torah and Judaism is Rabbi Meir Soloveitchik, who's a modern Orthodox / whatever you want to call from the Soloveitchik tradition. And that's my most valuable teaching in Torah, is through his point of view and bringing theology into the present world. That's what he does best, is to say, I look at history and I look at literature, I look at art and everything, and I can see Judaism through all those different lenses. Actually, last week I sent the Devar Torah from last week's Torah portion. Of course, we're just past Tisha B'Av, and in this week, Rabbi Soloveitchik brings us up to date in the beginning of the high holiday season and how this Torah portion relates to that.
All right. Thank you, Stan. Thank you. All right, we're gonna move on and jump to now a whole new conversation. Moving from Deuteronomy chapter 3 to Deuteronomy chapter 5. At Hadvarim Ha'ela, Moses is confirming the 10 commandments that God gave to the children of Israel in this week's Torah portion. And he says, Adonai spoke those words, those 10 commandments, to your whole congregation at the mountain, out of the fire and the dense clouds, with a mighty voice, those and no more. He inscribed them on 2 tablets of stone, which he gave to me. So what do we do with this line, Kol Gadol Velo Yasef? No, a loud voice and no more. Yasaf. So Sfat Emet says, he translates those words, a mighty voice, those and no more, a great sound that did not stop. Those sounds continue and can be heard even today. But in order to hear them, we have to engage in preparations as great as those undertaken on that first day. That is the sense of the verse. Now, if you will listen to my voice. Okay. What's going on here? Do you understand what the Sfat Emet is addressing?
No.
What is the nature of Kol Gadol, a great voice?
Yeah.
What's the nature of a great voice? Yes, George?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little different here from what I had learned in the past,
Well, wait a minute. Wait, are you answering the question, what is Sfat Emet talking about? Or are you?
No, what Kol HaGadol is.
According to the Sfat Emet, what is Kol Gadol?
Oh, that's the loud voice from heaven.
No, that's not what the Sfat Emet is saying. Take a look at what the Sfat Emet is saying. What is the nature of Kol Gadol?
Mighty voice?
No.
Where is it?
What makes the voice Gadol? According to the Sfat Emet.
It didn't stop. Okay.
Well, that's not a small matter. That's a big deal. In other words, don't roll over that. What he's saying is what makes God's voice kol,
Yeah.
gadol, as opposed to our voice, is that it continues to speak the same words even to this day. God did not give revelation at Mount Sinai to the children of Israel thousands of years ago. It wasn't a single moment. That moment of revelation happens at every moment that we stop to listen to the voice of God.
Yeah.
In many ways, it's what Ian was saying earlier when he was describing the understanding of God, how God is in this world. Mort, he was answering your comment. If you just stop and listen, if you take note of the world in which we live, we can hear that thundering voice of God on Mount Sinai sharing those same words even today. But it takes some work by us in order to be able to hear that voice. That's why he says preparation. Yeah, go ahead, Eileen.
Do you think as they walked into the gas chambers, they heard God's voice?
Wow. What a phenomenal question, Eileen.
Do you think anybody in any of those camps heard God's voice?
It's such a big question that I don't feel like I have the proper answer, but I've done a lot of reading of Holocaust survivors and Holocaust literature. And I would say for many, they did not hear God's voice. And for many, they did. And who knows, Eileen, if that was me walking to the gas chamber, whether I would hear God's voice or not. But I do know that there were countless examples of people who said that it's only because they heard God's voice that they were able to survive the Holocaust. And only because they never lost their humanity in a place where the Nazis tried so hard to destroy people's humanity that they survived the Shoah. And those people that acted with humanity, I actually just read about 2 weeks ago, a beautiful memoir from somebody who was a Holocaust survivor. And he said that the Nazis continued to try to turn us into animals. And like the mere fact that I didn't, that I shared my bread with others and that others share their bread with me was how we survived the war. And that is hearing God's voice. When you don't turn yourself into the animal that the Nazis want you to be turned into. And by the way, it's the same argument today. I just listened to an Israeli general speak yesterday, and he said, Hamas wants us to be like Hamas. Hamas wants us to fight this war the way that they're fighting this war. And the only way that we will be who we are and survive in the Mideast is if we continue to hear the voice of God and not act the way that our enemies want us to act. So that's the best answer I can give you, Eileen. Stan.
Well, there's many sources of Holocaust literature, whatever. One of the best is the March of the Living in their website, where you can actually listen to dozens of survivors and they tell their story and maybe answer your question in the way that they do.
If I may,
Yeah.
I have a personal story regarding this. My Zaidi came from a Satmar family, and after the Shoah, during which all but a few of his cousins were killed, he maintained faith in some capacity throughout his life afterward. He never went back to being a Chassid. but he was religious. And even when he lacked the ability to say, keep Shabbos, because he had to work to put food on the table, he always had faith. And in the end, according to what my aunt and what my father have said, it's because he never wanted to feel lonely. When God is there, when we have knowledge of the I-thou relationship that we can form with God, then a relationship with God becomes spiritually fulfilling. It's something that everyone has the free will to choose to initiate or not to initiate. And I suppose in the grand scheme of things, many of us continue to have a relationship with God simply because, well, it's how we remain Jews, or at least it's the best way we know of for how we remain Jews, or one of the best ways.
Yeah, I would say, thanks. Thank you. Eileen, the fact that, to emphasize Ian's point, the fact that you're here, the fact that all of you show up on a weekly basis to study Torah is, in a sense, hearing God's voice. The beautiful or profound moment at Mount Sinai, Eileen and everybody else, is that every person who stood at Mount Sinai heard God's voice in his or her own unique fashion. And when you live your life the way that you live your life, whether you're Hasidic observant or completely secular, doesn't necessarily deny you hearing God's voice in your own unique way. Necessarily mean to hear God's voice that you have to be observant like the people who are observant at Shaarei Tzedek. Is that you live your life as a Jew in the manner in which you hear God calling and being authentic to you. That's what I think the Sfat Emet is trying to teach us. Does that make sense, Eileen?
Yeah, in a way, but I've also read Holocaust survival books, and they don't have anything to do with God. It has to do with how they were or how lucky they were.
It's true. You're right. Absolutely right.
Many of the survivors will continue to be frum after the massacre, and many ended up like Primo Levi, who was a non-believer before then and continued to be a non-believer after. It's your free will to decide how you spiritually connect to God. It's an act that's up to each and every one of us. And certainly within our tradition, we think within our tradition, it is stated that it's incumbent upon us. Nevertheless, we have the free will to choose. And the way we perpetuate the tradition is by constantly reminding ourselves of the reasons why we should choose.
It's difficult, faith. It's difficult to hear the voice of God. It's difficult when things happen in our life to us or to people who we love. That faith, and I think that's the last comment that we're going to look at today from the Ve'ahavta. And these shall be on your heart. And the Shem Mishmuel says, my grandfather, the Rebbe of Kotsk, taught these words should rest on your heart like a stone. That way, when the heart opens in that particular instant, those words will enter it. What did he mean? For the most part, the heart is closed and things do not penetrate. But we should not get overly upset about this. It should not be an excuse to be lax in serving God. Let the words rest like a stone on your heart outside, so that in the moment of spiritual, when the heart opens, these words will enter into the inner recess heart. Here he's saying is, as closed and in your ways, as determined as you are in your mind, as you have been in the way in which you see and walk in this world, don't be so stuck. There's always the possibility of seeing something new, of hearing something different, of learning, and of being in this world in a different way. That your heart should be that which is open. And sometimes you need that hard yes to push it to get inside of it. But life can be those hard stones that allow us to have our hearts penetrated that we couldn't even begin. That's, Ve'ahavta is. Can you hear me?
No,
No.
we don't hear you.
You cut off a bit.
You're frozen.
I think he's frozen. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Can you hear us?
So what happened was
You were frozen.
the internet we're getting at the synagogue, they're rewiring all of the cable underground, putting in new fiber optics, because right now we have so many people on, we don't have the capacity to have great internet. So what happened was I froze, the whole thing froze, but we're back enough, at least for me to say thank you all. Always
Thank
for
you,
rich,
Rabbi.
Thank you.
meaningful, deep discussions. And I look forward to being with you all again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat
Bye.
shalom,
Shabbat
everybody.
shalom.